Greetings and welcome to the University of Minnesota Alumni Association's webinar series. My name is John Ruzek and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks here at the U. Thanks to all the alumni and friends who have made time to join us live today. And we got a great topic coming up for you. Have you ever been fearful that your colleagues at work might find out that you don't know what the heck you're doing? Studies show that up to 70% of high-achieving professionals, men and women alike, suffer from the imposter syndrome, which affects their confidence and fulfillment at work. In fact, I just read an article about it in the New York Times, and also I remember hearing Paul McCartney often say that he had these feelings of doubt. So if Sir Paul McCartney of the Beatles can have this, then definitely I've seen it with others and also felt it myself at times. So we're excited to have our presenter here today, who I've heard present this topic on another webinar, and I really think you'll enjoy the conversation. Today's webinar is part of a free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. We'll be running monthly webinars from now and through May, and stay tuned in December. We'll be rolling out our spring lineup as well. This webinar is being recorded and will be viewable afterwards at minnesotaalumni.org/webinars. Just give us a few business days to post it on our website. And if you're on Twitter right now, you can tweet at us with the hashtag UMNWebinar. We'd love to hear from you. Also, I've listed our Twitter handles for the Alumni Association and our presenter if you're interested in connecting via Twitter. We have some upcoming webinars in December. Our colleagues at the College of Continuing Education, we're helping to promote their December 3rd webinar on how to become a persuasive business storyteller. And then on December 17th, alumnus Jack Brewer will be talking about power principles for creating effective, efficient teams. So definitely sign up for those as well. We'd love to have you join us. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. If you haven't participated via webinar before, you have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you would prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel, and dial-in information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this can be caused by having multiple software applications open, which eats up your computer's bandwidth, or sometimes you've also seen audio difficulties if you're just listening off of a wireless signal. So you could also try moving to a hardwired internet connection as well. Questions. We will have some time for questions near the end of the presentation today. And you can submit them. Just type your questions in the questions pane of your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be monitoring them along the way. So just send us your questions that you'd like to run by our presenter. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our webinar speaker today, Hallie Crawford, a certified career coach, speaker, and author from Atlanta, Georgia, whose coaching company, HallieCrawford.com, helps people identify their ideal career path, navigate their career transition, and nurture their careers. She's been coaching since 2002 and has undergrad and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt and the University of Illinois at Chicago. She has served on the board of the Georgia Coach Association and is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including CNN, Fox Business News, The Wall Street Journal, U.S. News and World Report, Kiplinger, and Forbes.com. And I've had the pleasure of hearing some of her previous webinars that she's done for Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech. So I'm absolutely delighted that we could have her join us here today and welcome her to our University of Minnesota virtual audience. Welcome, Hallie.
Thank you so much, John, for having me. And I love the Twitter piece. Say good things on Twitter, everybody. That's a new thing for me. I haven't, as I've done these webinars before, I haven't necessarily done that Twitter part of it. So I love that. Very fancy. Cool.
All right. And I'm transferring over panelist control to you. So there we go. Looks like we're in business. Take it away.
Okay. All right. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I am honored and thrilled to be here and appreciate your time on your lunch hour or around your lunch hour, too. We will make it worthwhile. So we are here today to talk about overcoming the imposter syndrome, and I'll show you in just a second our agenda and what we're going to be talking about today. But first, I wanted to tell you a quick little story. So I have to admit to you, I am 42. I know I look like I'm 12. But I feel this way even after being an entrepreneur and a business owner, for 13 years. I still feel this imposter syndrome all the time. This is me on the far left here when I was 25 with my mom and my sister. And at that time, I had a really hard time defining my career direction. I was very unhappy with, my life professionally. And I kind of felt like everybody, the only thing I had going for me was this cute Halle Berry haircut. And there was lots of imposter syndrome kind of going on at that time, even though I did really well at the jobs that I had. But, it's kind of seems like it might be a normal or more normal thing to have when you're that age. I was about 25, okay? So fast forward much later. This is me today. Like I said, 43, a long time later. And my mom, she actually lives here in Atlanta, so I get to see her all the time, which is great. And she will give me this great advice. And I remember several months ago, we were standing in her driveway, and I was talking to her about some, personal issues and just some, job type of struggles, just basic stuff. And she gave me this great advice. And I said, wow, that's so good. Where did you hear that? And she looked at me and she said, Hallie, I read it on your blog. And so I tell you this to let you know that I totally understand how this works. And I would say that about 40% of the time I feel this way. It depends on the day and the situation. And John, you were great. You're admitting it too, that sometimes you feel this way also. And for me at least, and you all can probably relate to this, it depends on the day and the situation, okay? And sometimes for me in particular, it's hard because I have a home office. I work at home alone. So sometimes it's easier to psych myself out, right, and have these kind of thoughts going through my head. So one of the things I want to kind of throw out there for you all to start thinking about is you can start to notice for yourself the times of day that this typically happens for you, or does it happen when you're talking, to a particular person or in a certain type of meeting or working with a client, whatever it is. So one of the things I want you to just start even thinking about right now, so get out your pen and paper, is when do I typically feel this, or when do these voices come into my head? And we'll talk more about what they are in just a moment. But I want you to start to think about like trends or themes in your life and in your career, because the more you can identify when this is happening for you, you can nip it in the bud right away, okay? So here's the deal for me. I've got this great website and my business is successful and I absolutely love what I do. I'm passionate about it. But still, there are some days when I'll make a mistake in my business and this voice in my head says, you're not as great a business owner as you look. Or if I don't know an immediate answer for a client, I might feel bad or, have these negative voices. And we get kudos all the time on our services, and our reputation in the industry is fantastic, and this could be the same way for you. You might be getting tons of kudos all the time, but you can still have these voices. So first thing I kind of want you all to know is you're not alone. This is very normal. And when I do these webinars on this particular topic, everyone else really resonates with it, even very successful people who are later in their career. Okay, so here's our agenda. We are going to define the imposter syndrome. We'll talk about, number 2 here will be the impact that it has on people that I have seen, that it has on me, but more specifically the clients that we work with and that I've seen. And what I have found is, obviously there's the internal impact, which we just talked about a second ago, those voices in our head or the fears that you might have. There's also the external impact, though, as a result of those internal voices, or however you want to see them, there's an external impact, and we'll discuss that as well. We'll talk about some specific tools to manage. If any of you on the webinar today have tools that you use to manage this, we'd love to hear about that in the chat box. And then we'll talk about action steps as well. And by the way, too, I will be sending to John so he can provide it to everyone. And let me just go to the next slide here so you'll know why I'm bringing this up. There will be some links inside of the presentation. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint, everyone, as well, just as a PDF version. So you'll be able to at least access the links a little bit more easily. Okay. All right, so how do we define it? So kind of step one here is how do we define the imposter syndrome? So basically here, we love Wikipedia, right? It's a psychological phenomenon in which people are unable or have a harder time internalizing their accomplishments. They might be convinced they're frauds. In some ways, I think that might be too strong of a word. You may feel that way, or some people might be like, yeah, I just feel like I'm kind of faking it and don't really know. But most of the time, they feel like they can't internalize their accomplishments, and for whatever reason, they don't deserve the success or the kudos that they get, okay? And third here, the bottom of the slide is, a lot of us will assume like it's luck or a break rather than the talent that they have or the hard work that they put into it. And this happens to me a lot. Like someone will say, oh, your business is so successful or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, well, during the recession, you know, we got a lot more business, and that helped. You know, I always point to some, or often point to some external reason as opposed to the things that I've done. And this is actually, John, that was great. Thanks for bringing up this New York Times article. This is the link to the article John was just talking about a few minutes ago, everyone. So if you want to take a look at that, this is something recent about how to deal with this. So it's something that I've actually seen more like covered in the media more prevalently lately too. And sorry if I stumble every once in a while, guys. I love what I do. I get excited. So, all right. So this is another quick article I wanted to share with you too. So this is obviously from Inc. magazine. And here's what I wanted to point out. So if you take a look at this quote here, this was Bud Stockwell. He owns a health food store, Cornucopia. I believe it's out in California. And this was a quote from this article. He was receiving an award about his business. And this is what he literally said. He didn't feel like he deserved it. It was because of, you know, the location or the staff. Okay, great. As leaders, we all know, yes, we don't need to take all of the credit, and we need to give credit to our team and other things as well. But it's just interesting to me because this seems so at odds with being an entrepreneur who we assume is so confident when they're so successful. So to just point out to you that even very confident people have this, or people who are very successful. So don't assume that everyone is walking around feeling so much more confident than you are all the time, even if they might seem like it. It's normal to have this sense of things, this, you know, imposter syndrome, and the key, everyone, is to not allow it to freeze you, okay? So again, just a sense of, even if you're seasoned in your career and all of that, just take some of the pressure off and understand that this is normal. And this is, by the way, the link to the article if you want to take a look at it more later, okay? And the other thing, real quick before I move to the next slide, you know, people sometimes will ask me, do I see this more in men versus women or vice versa? And you'll see in a couple moments here, there's a few books that I'll recommend for those on the call today who feel like, ooh, I really need some more assistance with this. And several of them are directed more towards women. I would say out of our client base, yes, more women tend to have it, but the percentage, I don't know, maybe like 5% more, not necessarily, it's not a huge gap. So please know too that this is someone that, or something that both, you know, men and women struggle with. It depends on just so many factors, their life situation, everything else going on, okay? But that's part of why I brought this up too, because I think sometimes we may assume that it's something that women feel more frequently. All right, so here's the deal, some statistics. John shared a couple of these at the beginning. So basically, the facts or stats show that about 2 out of 5 successful people consider themselves frauds in some way. Now again, for me, that's a little bit of a strong word, but you get the gist of it, okay? And approximately 70% of all people feel like imposters at one time or another, okay? So again, knowing and understanding this is a normal thing. Here are the books, and then we're going to go into a little bit more defining about this and then talk about the impacts as well. But here are the books that I was just referencing. Here's the deal with this slide, everybody. The book I like the best is this one, Taming Your Gremlin. I find this one is the most helpful because it's not just about the imposter syndrome, it's about other fears or negative thinking that we might have. And I really like it because it's a quick, easy read. I learned about this technique about, taming your gremlin. It's kind of a cute way of dealing with it, which is very helpful for people. But it's a simple way of dealing with any negative thinking that you have or those negative voices in your head, okay? And as I said before, you'll see these books seem, they're more geared towards women, goes both ways. But if you want to dive into this a little bit more, you can find all of these on Amazon, okay? All right, so let's keep plugging here. All right, so basically, here's what I find is that there are 3 categories. If we're shifting to our agenda item number 2 here, everyone, the internal impact. Basically, I see about 3 internal impacts, if you will, that people either they feel like a fake, like we talked about, they're attributing success to luck or something else external, okay, or they're discounting their success. So we're going to do a quick poll here, John, if you can get that going. I want to say a couple things while he's working on that, okay? And we're going to poll you about which of these applies to you. If you feel like all 3 do, that's okay. It's pretty normal. Pick the one that's the biggest one for you, okay? So here's the deal. Awareness, everyone, is a huge first step. When you look at the Taming Your Gremlin book, that's what he talks about as well. The fact that you start to pay attention to this in the first place is going to help minimize it right out of the box. That's the good news. So as I talked about earlier, starting to know and understand when this happens to you more. Is it right before a presentation, a certain meeting, a certain coworker, whatever? The more you notice those themes and patterns, the better, okay? And while you're thinking on this too, and starting the poll here and thinking about that and filling it out, I wanted to tell you a quick story. I had a client, Beth, and she was here in Atlanta. She worked at Home Depot, and she was pretty high up. She was a marketing director, level. She had all of these 3 categories. She felt like she wasn't as talented as others thought she was because she didn't have a college degree. I didn't even know that until 3 sessions in. She admitted that to me because she was so embarrassed about it. And it was something that kind of haunted her whole career. She always felt like she got some lucky breaks along the way. Oh, I had bosses who liked me and promoted me because they liked me as opposed to they valued her talent. And as a result, she discounted her success enormously. She didn't value herself. And the biggest thing at the time was, and then John, I'll pause and we'll do the poll, the biggest problem for her was that she felt she couldn't move on from this job at Home Depot because even though she was so unhappy, she was like, nobody else is going to hire me. So it's a very compelling story for me that illustrates this well. So I'm ready for the poll when you are, John.
All right, here are the poll results. 42% feeling like a fake, 17% attributing success to luck, and 41% discounting success.
Ooh, so the fake and the discounting success are head-to-head or neck-to-neck here. So this is great for you all to know and be aware of. Please make a note of this for yourselves, which one you chose, okay? And again, think about those times when, ooh, where do I discount my success the most? And when do I feel like I fake the most? So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. All right, let's keep moving. So let's talk about this one too. So next poll, John, if you can get that queued up for me too. So here's the deal. We want to also think about how often this happens for you. Okay, so kind of how, I don't want to say crippling because that's kind of too strong a word, but we get the gist. For me, like I said, it's probably about 40% of the time. It depends on, the day, what's going on, all of that situationally. But think about this for a moment, okay? Is it less than 50%? Is it more? Write that down for us, okay? And John's opening the poll, which is great. And then again, think about when you feel like it more than others. Giving a speech, that personally for me is something that's tough. Like at the very beginning of a speech for me in person, I'm usually, nervous like anybody else is. And then as I get into the groove of it and people are participating and all that, it goes away completely. So go ahead and let's do this poll. And John, let me know when you're closing it out.
All right, it's just closed out. Very few feel it none of the time. About 40% feel it 25% of the time. 37% feel it half the time, and about 20% feel it 75% of the time.
Okay, so the biggest one is 25%, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay, cool. It's kind of hard for me to see, but I can.
Yeah,
So
25 about 77% of the respondents either list 25% or 50% of the time.
okay, good. That's not too bad. So that's good news, everyone. And what you want to be thinking about is, okay, even though it's not, the majority of the time, that's fantastic, but what does it do to you in the moment? Like, how difficult or bad is the impact? Because then we need to think about that. Like, so with my client Beth, it was literally like hindering her career progression and preventing her from making a move that she really needed to. And I'll tell you the end of her story closer to the end of this today. And for someone else, it might just be, I feel this way, and it's kind of annoying or frustrating, and maybe I don't speak up in a meeting, but it's not that bad. So think about how difficult or tough the impact is for you too, okay? And actually, get out your pen and paper again, everybody, and think about 2 to 3 ways, and just write this down and feel free to share it in the chat box, and we'll address it as we go or at the end. 2 to 3 ways you think you discount your success, because I think all of us do that to a certain extent. And if you can start to think about that one in particular, that's really, really good, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. All right, so here's the deal just really quickly, and then we're going to move to talking about the external impact, because that's really, the biggest deal about how we behave as a result, or what happens to us kind of tangibly as a result. But when we talk to our clients, and even prospective clients for career coaching, one of the questions we ask them right up front is, what is your biggest obstacle or hindrance, the biggest thing that stands in your way of, achieving your career goals? And I got to tell you guys, 9 times out of 10, hands down, the clients tell us they are their biggest obstacle. They are getting in their own way. And so I really just want you to get how big this can be for anyone, and how important it is to manage those fears, overcome them, and take tangible action steps to manage them so that they're not holding you back, okay? And it's just interesting to me, because they always say, like, it's me, and then we talk about what's going on. Is it they don't want to take risks? Is it they don't have enough confidence? Is it they're afraid that, well, I'm going to go for my dream job and it won't end up being the dream job? Whatever it is, awareness is that first step, and you need to know exactly what's going on first. All right, so let's take a look at the results, the external impact, and I think this is, I just love this image, so I love using this on the slide because it's very cute and funny. So we'll do poll number 3 in just a second, John, if you want to get that one started or get it ready about what's the biggest negative impact for you. And we've got a list over here on the right, everyone, on this slide. So here are some of the tangible impacts, and I got to tell you, like, these are some of the ones that I've heard from clients. And when I do these webinars, I hear a ton more. There's so many different things that people can speak to and say, this is what happens to me as a result. So is it that you don't apply for that new job, like client Beth, or go for that promotion? Do you not submit papers, or you don't want to give a presentation or articles to your association, even though, let's say, it will help your career progression? Do you understate your experience and skill? And okay, like, I get that, in some ways we do want to be humble, right? And we want to give credit to our team. It's not like, hogging the limelight all the time. But the problem comes in when we do this way too much. And even when we do it and we don't even realize it, like, it's our knee-jerk reaction. And we do it constantly without even knowing it. And then in some cases, this was one that was very interesting, that several clients said to me, the perfectionism can come into play here if you have this imposter syndrome or sense of it. And a lot of clients will tell us they'll over-prepare for tasks to the point where they're starting to waste time just because they're worried about getting something wrong, or they feel like they don't know what they're doing even when they actually do. So all of these results, if you take a look at the bottom here, and let me see if I can get rid of the bottom of my screen. Yeah, okay, I just figured out how to do that recently. Is they all result, everyone, in higher levels of stress. In whatever way they're impacting you, it's higher stress for you, okay? The impact on me, and then we'll get to the poll, I promise, is that I feel like when this is happening for me, I'm not my best self. I might avoid doing work that I really need to do, but I might still take action in some ways, whether it's, you know, talking to a prospective client or whatever it is for my business. I might be taking action, but I'm not handling it as well as I could. I'm being more reactive rather than proactive when I'm feeling this way, okay? And we talked about the negative thinking and the internal impact, and I want you to start thinking about this tangible external impact. And again, feel free, if you have any others, everyone, that you want to add to this list, feel free to share those in the chat. And then, John, let's go ahead and do the poll.
Okay,
here
are the results.
Okay, good.
34% say the biggest negative impact is not applying for jobs or promotion. 10% say not submitting papers, presentations, articles. 27% understating experience and skills. 23% over preparing for tasks, and 5% other.
Okay, all right, good. So some of these, everyone, will apply to you based on your industry and your job, and some won't. But the biggest one, it looks like, is not applying for the job or the promotion. Then that's a big deal. And that happens to a lot of our clients, like I said, even though they may be very unhappy in their career path or in their company or their role, they won't do something about it because they feel like, well, I don't have the skills, or they don't feel that sense of confidence because they're not good enough for whatever reason to apply for that next job. So thanks for sharing, everyone, and letting us know where you're at with this. So again, think about these, okay, and what the tangible impacts are for you. And let's keep going here. So tools to manage. Okay, so this is the biggest one, right? So I definitely recommend, for any of you who feel like this is a big deal for you, purchasing that Taming Your Gremlin book. It's very, very good. This is another little cool test, if you look at the bottom here in this link, that can help you identify, like, first of all, if you have this. Most of you are on the call today because you feel like you do, but it's a cool little test to help you identify where it impacts you more than others, okay? And as I said before, identifying this is the biggest first step. So take a look at this afterwards. You'll like it. It's very, short and sweet. And here are some tools that you can start to use to manage this. And then there's a couple of slides on this, everyone. And then as we do the Q&A portion at the end, if anyone has anything to share about this, that's great too. We'd love to hear it. So first of all, one of the tools to manage is to journal for a day about the negative thinking that's going on. So here's the deal with this one. One of the assignments that I will give to our clients is, I want you to identify and understand what your gremlins are doing in your head. So I'll have them, like, just get a journal or a piece of paper, put it on their desk for a day or even just half a day, okay? Keep it short. And write down every time you have one of these negative thoughts that relates to the imposter syndrome, or it doesn't always have to, but any one of these negative thoughts or fears. Those are kind of the two categories. And write down what's going on in your head. What are you saying to yourself? And how are you feeling as a result? And I got to tell you guys, it's so interesting to me because everyone always comes back and says, well, first of all, I'm saying the same thing over and over to myself. It's like a broken record. And that's actually good news, everybody, because that means that we usually only have like one or two gremlins in our head. They're just saying the same thing over and over, and they're holding hands and having a party in our noggin, right? So the deal is that usually we are saying the same thing over and over, which means that it's a little bit easier for us to manage it. We don't have to combat all these different fears. Typically for people, 2 or 3 max, and that's it. So that's good. And when you journal for a day about this too, what people will also tell me is, I can't believe how much time I spend on this. It's wasted energy and wasted time thinking about this stuff that I could be using to be more productive. So the journaling can help you enormously with the identification of it, okay? When you're identifying and managing your negative thinking, remember that just one single mistake that you make does not reflect upon your abilities overall. So as you start to notice these voices, so to speak, in your head, or fears, keep in mind rationally that this isn't, this is just one of those things that Hallie was talking about on the webinar. It doesn't reflect on reality, and I need to think about it from a more realistic perspective, okay? And the flip side of this, so a second kind of tool here, after you've done the first one to kind of identify what's going on in your head, is to journal about what you've accomplished. So get in the habit of writing down your daily accomplishments to feel better. Do it for a straight week, even beyond that. And write it down, you know, like these are the 3 things I accomplished, or these are the skills I used today, so that you start to train your brain to focus on the positive and what you did do well. It will help boost your confidence and also help you focus in the right way, okay? And this is also actually a great thing. I've had a few clients tell me, and I'm going to just write down something real quick because I want to say both of them for you. So first of all, if you're writing down your accomplishments like this, everybody, this can become like the beginning of your brag book, so to speak, that you can then use for applying for that promotion or going for it or applying for that next job. It's great to include these accomplishments and continuously keep your resume updated with these things so that when it comes time to leverage that and use it, again, even if it's just going for a promotion where you don't necessarily need your resume per se, then you have this list in front of you. It's a lot easier, okay? And some of our clients will actually put together what I call a brag book to take on their interviews with their resume in it, their LinkedIn profile, recommendations, any projects they've worked on, they'll give it to all the different interviewers, okay? So that's kind of like a side tip for your search. The second thing I've heard about, which I think is a great idea, is people will keep like great emails that they've gotten from either clients, customers, or coworkers over time. And they'll put it like in a folder on their desk or in their drawer. And when they're having a hard time, sometimes bring it out to remind them of, oh, look at all this great stuff that I do. This is just one, you know, drop in the bucket one day that I had a hard time. So I can't remember honestly what they called this, but it was like one of those, kind of like a brag book, but more like this is the thing I know I need to reach for, and keep all of those emails that you get, everyone, so that you can go back to them to remind yourself of this. So those are a couple of tools. I'll give you some others on the next slide, okay? So let's go back to client Beth again. So one of the things that we did to help her improve her confidence were these things, okay? So there's 5 here, and like I said, there's many more specific to your situation that you can use, and feel free to share some in the chat box like we said. But here are a couple of things that we did with Beth. So first of all, I had her interview others and ask them, hey, what do you think I do really well? When you think of me, what stands out in your mind? So that she could boost her confidence based on what others saw in her. And remember how we talked about the discounting success a little bit earlier, everyone? We tend to do this, and I do it all the time, and John, I bet you can relate to this too. When we're really good at something, we tend to discount it and think, oh, well, everybody else is good at that. That means nothing, right? It's not something that I actually bring to the table. I do this all the time myself. So the interviewing others, everyone, that first step, can help you not do that, not discount those things that come naturally to you. And that's the critical piece there, the things that come naturally to you. Be careful, because that's where we tend to discount our success or discount our talents and skills and abilities, okay? So we had her interview others to uncover those things that, you know, she took for granted. Number 2, we had her write down an affirmation. So it was kind of, part of this was helping her understand her brand, what was, you know, great about her and what she brought to the table in terms of soft skills, everyone, and hard skills. So remember that hard skills are those things like, I know this kind of software, I'm great at, you know, presentation skills, those kinds of things. Soft skills, and actually I think it could be argued that presentation skills would be soft skills, but soft skills are those like people skills, great team player, I'm great at leading a group, keeping us on task, holding the agenda, those kinds of things. So when you write down, if you write down some affirmations, include both. Like, these are the things I'm good at work. I'm great at, you know, the software, whatever it is, but also the soft skills too. And with her, this helped enormously. She wrote some affirmations, put them up on her bathroom mirror, you know, set them for several weeks every day. It does, it helps. Psychological studies have shown that you can train your brain just like professional athletes do, right? They focus on and train their brains to think about the outcome that they want, okay, and thinking more positively. A third thing that's actually pretty cool is we had her write down all of her accomplishments since childhood. I recommend this for everyone on the call. It's great to do that. It's a fun exercise, but also what happens to people is you look at, oh my goodness, look at all these things that I've done, and you remind yourself of all these cool things that you may have forgotten or don't focus on. And the last two things, 4 and 5 here, everybody on the slide, these are really good ones too. So one of the things I have clients do to kind of build their confidence and overcome this imposter syndrome is to take small risks every day. Raise your hand in that meeting more than you normally would. Speak up when normally you would hold back. For people, just as an example, you know, my clients that are more introverted, I'll be like, just strike up a conversation with the cashier at the grocery store or whatever it is when you normally wouldn't do that. Here's the deal with this, everyone. Confidence is a muscle that has to be worked out and developed over time. I really don't believe that we either have it or we don't. Sure, some people are more confident than others, but part of it is because they haven't worked out that muscle, so to speak. And one of the ways you can do that is to take these risks every day, push yourself a little bit, and over time your confidence will be built up slowly but surely. And then the last one, number 5 here, this is a great TED Talk. I love these TED Talks on body language. And it's a great one about talking about power poses, how important it is to, you know, pay attention to your physical body position at work and in meetings. Stand up when you want to feel more confident. When you're on the phone, sit up straight. And here's what I would say about this one, and then we'll go to the next slide, is that when we're working with clients on an emotional shift, and I would kind of classify, you know, lack of confidence or imposter syndrome as an emotional shift, you know, we have to work on the internal stuff. Physical movement supports that enormously. We will always have clients do something physical in order to like shift the way they're, you know, they're sitting or body posture or whatever it is to support what they're trying to shift internally, and it makes a huge difference. Think about your tone and your volume as well as your posture, leaning forward and looking people in the eye each time. It's a great little TED Talk about that. Okay, so let's talk about the action steps. So here's the deal. I want you to come up with, and everybody get this out, and you can share this in the, get your pen out and share this in the chat box if you'd like to. I want you to come up with 2 action steps you'll take in the next week. It could be interviewing others. It could be writing down the accomplishments since childhood, whatever works for you. But based on, by the way, if you do the interviewing others piece of it, you can brainstorm action items with those people based on their feedback too, okay? So start to think about 2 action steps that you will take in the next week, all right? Really quickly, while you're thinking about that, we are going to do, and John, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, we are going to send out a door prize to a participant, just kind of draw a name out of a hat here for today as a thank you for coming. If anyone needs assistance with this or their career direction or career transition, I would be happy to speak with you about our services. There are low-cost products on our site here if you want to kind of stick your toe in the water and do some, you know, get some basic advice at the beginning. But if anyone would like a complimentary 20-minute career strategy session to help you prepare for the new year, I would be happy to do that with you as well. Complimentary, give you some advice on next steps that you need to take to help you achieve your career goals. And if you're really ready to make that happen, you want to go for the strategy session. The link is here to sign up for that, okay? All right, so we'll start to wrap up here, and I want to tell you the end of the story about Beth. So here's the deal with Beth, and then we'll open it up, John, for Q&A and comments and questions. So Beth is actually now in Chicago. She got over her imposter syndrome, applied for a fantastic job up there that was a huge step up in her career, and moved her whole family up there. It was that big of a deal for her, career-wise, that they all moved up there for her job. And I was just so proud of her. And so I want you all to get like how important this is and how important it is, even if you're taking baby steps towards this, towards managing it, how important it is for you to do this, because it can have that big of an impact on you as it did on her. All right, so Think about this question, everybody. What will be different tomorrow as a result of today? And I don't know about you, but I've gone to webinars like this or speeches or whatever, and I'm sure we can all relate to this, and we're gung-ho right afterwards. And then the phone rings or our kids are sick or whatever it is, and it's easy to get distracted. So I would just suggest 2 action steps and keep them short and sweet and simple, but set a goal for yourself that you want to accomplish, let's say 5 things, let's say by the end of the year, so that you plan it out and project it out past that. All right, John, I'm ready for Q&A and any comments that are in the box.
All right, great. Well, first, there's a comment that one of our participants says that she likes the idea of listing accomplishments since childhood. She thinks that it also has another benefit of seeing a trajectory over time. So as you're looking back over your accomplishments, you can kind of see really how far you have gone. And then actually one question, and I love how this was framed, but I think I get where what the person's saying is that he asks, are there situations in which the imposter syndrome may be contagious? And so like if you are being, negative or self-doubting, are there situations where, maybe that spreads to coworkers or family members, things like that? What's your take on that question?
Oh gosh, I absolutely agree with that. That's a fantastic question. So yes, it can be. And here's what I found is 2 things. Number one, yeah, if your energy is a certain way or someone else's is, it can influence the rest of the group and the team, especially if you're close-knit and you're, let's say, working together in a meeting. It can bring the energy down just even from one person if people aren't aware of it. The other thing that I find is so interesting that's related to this too is, and I mean, I love my parents, right? But they definitely activate certain gremlins in me. And there was this joke, I think it was either my mom or a friend of hers said, your parents know how to push your buttons because they installed them. And I just think that, so accurate. So absolutely, it can be contagious in the way that like a certain person, if they're a negative Nelly in your life, or maybe they push a certain button, or they're always a certain way with you, or activate a fear, a friend even, that definitely can happen in that case as well and cause you to go into this more negative place. And they don't mean to, at least we hope they don't, right? So it's not about that. It's just about you paying attention to the reaction in you. And as we all know, what we can control is not others, but our reaction to things. So absolutely great question.
Here's another one. Participant is asking how to best handle or overcome discounting success in worrying about being the youngest on a team or in management. So maybe someone who's more younger in their career, but discounting that because of age.
Yeah, I think that's a great one too. So a couple of things come to mind here. So first of all, I'm a firm believer in a little bit of fake it till you make it. I mean, and I say that because I did that. When I was struggling with this and I was young, I worked at A&E Television Networks in their sales office here, and I was the youngest person there. And my boss even said this to me. She's like, you just got to go do it. And so one of the things I would say is it's not about like acting overconfident or, that kind of thing or bragging, but like, sometimes you've just got to push yourself and like don't worry about what others are thinking, or don't internalize as best as you can, kind of imagine like an imaginary wall there, and realize too that are you making up that other people feel that way, because you might be, so just check that out. May not be the case, but just in case. And even if they are, I really like the fake it till you make it, kind of mantra or idea, where you just need to plow ahead and do the things that you need to do to prove yourself, and even write a list for yourself and say, okay, I'm going to feel better. Like, what is it? What are they touching on? Okay, yes, I'm the youngest, but what's the problem there? Is it that maybe you don't know as much about this subject matter or whatever? Well, go beef up on that. So instead of just feeling it, okay, and getting stuck in that, create an action plan and say, if I did these 3 things, or if I knew about X, Y, Z, then I would feel better. And then go find a mentor who can help you with that. Read a book, take a class, whatever it is that would help you feel more confident and less concerned about being the youngest. That will help.
Great. And actually, as I was listening, I felt that what you're saying could apply to some of the questions that were coming in. A few participants also chimed in about what if you're the oldest person on your team or in management? How does that play out? But I think some of the things you were talking about could apply to that. But if there's anything else as far as kind of the opposite end of the age spectrum that you've seen working with people.
Sure, I think so too. So with the opposite end, it's focusing on what you do bring to the table. So it might be that, is it that you don't feel as hip to the trends that are going on in the industry or technology or whatever it is. Very similar, just go back to, okay, what do I need to do about it? What do I need to learn? And also, like, I would say too, don't try to pretend that you're something you're not either. Like, don't try to come in and be all more cool and hip or whatever is going on. Like, be proud of the experience that you bring to the table and focus on that and focus on why that's an asset instead of trying to become something else, as a result. But then also, yes, John, exactly, coming up with those action steps that will help you.
Mm-hmm. An earlier question, someone had talked about self-doubts as far as stepping into a leadership role and having doubts about becoming quote unquote the boss. How do you work with folk, or how can folks who are maybe moving into those roles, how can they not maybe second guess themselves as much?
Sure, I would say two things, and these actually one of them relates to the younger and the older set that we were just talking about too. So first of all, with this gremlin idea and these doubts and negative thinking, everyone, you can't discount reality. Like, you can't say, oh, I am young and cool and hip, and so what's the problem? You have to acknowledge, like, yes, I am this age, and that means that I am XYZ or I behave this way, right? But that doesn't matter. Like, the rest of what I bring to the table is so critical and valuable and important. So with this negative thinking, everyone, you can't just not acknowledge or gloss over reality. You have to acknowledge it, but then push aside the rest that's a fear. Do you need to talk back to it? These are some of the things I'll have people do with their gremlins. Talk back to it. Push it aside. I've had some people write down what the gremlin is saying or the fear and put it in the shredder. Like I said, I mean, some of these are funny, but they actually will make you, the goal with the gremlins is to become their observer rather than their victim. And the more you can do that and push those things aside, the better. In terms of the self-doubt about becoming the boss, write down your accomplishments and catalog it and keep a running list so that your confidence builds up over time. Like, okay, this is why I could become the boss. Ask other people too. What do they see in you that you actually have that you may be discounting? So coming up with those lists can help with that as well.
Nice. One questioner was referencing the imposter syndrome versus, have you ever heard of the Peter principle?
No.
All right, well, okay, we're going to do some I'm doing a live Google here right now. And so this is Peter principle is in which the selection of a candidate for a position is based on the candidate's performance in their current role rather than on their abilities relevant to the intended role. Thus, employees can only stop being promoted once they can no longer perform effectively. Yeah, I'm not, thank you for that question. I'm not as familiar with the Peter principle. So, yeah, kind of the question was, what if, in their role, what if the person is actually incompetent at their, in possibly their work role?
Mm-hmm. So you need to think about, okay, do I need to move on and where? Are you in the wrong fit? I mean, honestly, like, if that's happening and you're not competent, like, two things. Number one, do you love the job and do you actually want to be competent? So if that's the case, what do you need to do about it, and is it realistic for you to learn what's needed, okay? And number two, if you're not competent, let's say, and you're not happy, then you're in the wrong fit, and you've got to figure out your career direction and move into the wrong thing. Now, it's easier said than done, I realize, but that's kind of the way you need to evaluate it. And it can be hard if you do actually like it, but you feel like you're not good at it. You need to have kind of a face-to-face, conversation with yourself about it. Like, is this realistic? Find out what it's going to take to become competent from your boss, from people in the industry, from a mentor, whatever it is. And if it's possible, okay, put together a plan. I'm going to work on it for 6 months and see what happens. And if you're unhappy anyway, then you need to spend that 6 months figuring out, it's usually a little bit less than that, but figuring out the right direction.
Kudos to you. Someone wrote in that they will plan to present their, I think they're going to submit a conference presentation or a paper. They said they're going to do that now. They're going to do it tomorrow. So we have one piece of an action step that happened. Here's a great question that came in. Do you have any advice for dealing with a superior or a colleague who triggers the imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah, big one, right? And this is hard because you got to work with them all the time. Okay, so I would give yourself a timeline first and be like, okay, I'm going to really work hard at this for the next, month, and kind of like evaluate it at that point. So having a plan about it first, everybody, is important because it makes you feel like you're in control and it's just not like out of control and there's nothing to do about it. So say, okay, I'm going to try X, Y, Z for about a month, see how it goes, and then decide, can I even stay here, or is this becoming, toxic for me? So a couple ways to deal with it. It kind of depends on your relationship with them and, their communication style and who they are. So first, is it something that you can have a conversation with them about relatively directly? Like, when you say this or that, like, it's harder for me to get motivated. There's no pointing fingers here or blaming them or anything like that. But if you can ask them for what you want or need, like, do you mind, when we're in a meeting, talking about things this way, it'll help me understand things better, or, be more motivated. If you have that kind of relationship, you could do that. If you don't, and it's something that you need to think about how often it happens and where does it happen. Is it all the time, or is it less than that? And can you, like, remove yourself, let's say, from the situation sometimes if it's happening? And okay, if you're in a meeting, maybe not, but you can start to kind of imagine, okay, like, there's a wall here. I'm not, like, taking this stuff on and taking it in. But can you minimize your interaction with them during those certain times? Can you maybe email them instead, or respond to them via email? So I would figure out a way that you can try to not take it on, number one, and I know that can be easier said than done, but with this whole gremlin work that we talked about before, pushing it aside, that can help. And then two, either asking them to do things differently if that's possible, or trying to force it to be that way by adjusting your communication with them. So removing yourself, less interaction, or a more like passive way to interact when it's a touchy subject. So first identify when it normally happens and see if there are workworkarounds. And I know
That's
that
great.
was kind of a long answer.
No, that's wonderful. And actually, probably one last thing, we had one of our career coaches at the university writes in and just says that thank you for the tips, that she often works with high achieving students and that she sees the imposter syndrome occasionally in the appointments, and that the tips and strategies to overcome these will be helpful, and how she can help guide those conversations with our current student population as well. So thank you so much for that. And I think actually we're all done with questions. So again, if folks would like, we'll have Hallie will get me that PDF, and then also you can visit her website or follow her on Twitter. I do, and get a lot of good career articles. So Hallie, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. My pleasure. I appreciate it, John, and everyone else for being here today. Have a great day and great weekend and holiday, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. If you're on social media, be sure to connect with us in all the ways that you can connect with the Alumni Association. If you're on LinkedIn, we have a great listing of both our LinkedIn groups and other LinkedIn groups from across the University of Minnesota. So continue to expand your network. And in closing, members of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association make initiatives like this webinar series possible. Thank you so much. Because of our members, we can enrich the lives of alumni, support student success, and make a better University of Minnesota. You can become a member today at minnesotaalumni.org/join. That's the conclusion of today's webinar. And again, we'll have a recording up in a few days, so go back and visit our webinar landing page. We appreciate you joining us and for being an active member of the worldwide community of 455,000 University of Minnesota alumni and friends. Have a great day.